So usually once a year, around this time every year, I have to kind of give a little explanation to our new followers as to why Rudnick does not wear a blanket. We start seeing a lot of comments, especially in the winter, about how I'm being neglectful or cruel because I don't put Rudnick in a blanket. When in reality, all you have to do is ask nicely, and I will gladly explain. Horses, unless they're sick or struggling to put on weight or older or clipped for showing, do not need to wear a blanket. They don't, because their natural thick fur grows in thick enough that it more than keeps them warm through the winter. So for a horse like Rudnick, who's very healthy, young, has no problem gaining weight, quite the opposite actually, putting a blanket on him would actually be more detrimental to his health than just leaving him in his natural coat to stay warm. So because Rudnick has a full plush winter coat, if I were to throw a blanket on him, it would actually cause him to overheat. So what happens, especially in our climate, because we could have minus 10 degrees Celsius one day and the next day could be plus 10. So if I were to throw a blanket on Rudnick, obviously you could take it off, put it back on again as needed, but what would happen is because he has so much fur, he would actually start overheating and it would cause him to sweat underneath the winter blanket, because winter blankets are actually, they're very thick. So it's meant to replace their natural coat. It's not meant to be added on top of it. So blanketing a horse like Rudnick, who has no problem keeping himself warm, would cause him to sweat, he'd overheat, the sweat would then freeze, and it would basically cause a whole bunch of health problems with that. He could hypothermic, everything like that. So maybe it might look better to have a blanket on him. It's not going to be better for him, right? So, and because he's able to grow his own very thick, plush, natural coat. And so if I were to throw a blanket on him, just because I think he might be cold, I'm actually going to stunt the growth of that natural coat. And then it's going to get to the point where I have to blanket him because he's not able to keep himself warm naturally anymore. Now, if he were to suddenly show signs that he was losing weight, he was shivering, he was constantly wet, absolutely reasons to put a blanket on him. Because through the winter, they are going to burn a lot of energy keeping themselves warm, which is why you usually want them a little heavier going into the winter as well. Yeah, which Rudnick has no issue or problems gaining weight, so that's not a concern. But their coats are actually super thick. There's multiple layers to them, and I know I post this video every year, and I'm probably going to have to keep posting it every year because our following continues to grow, and we get a lot of followers who don't own horses themselves, haven't been around horses, or live in an environment where every horse that they see is blanketed because maybe it's a show area or something like that. So if Rudnick was clipped, which is where you go and you shave their natural coat down, absolutely he'd need a blanket. If he was old and needed his energy for other things through the winter, absolutely throw him in a blanket. But right now he's young, he's healthy, he's super thick coat, so there's no need to blanket him because we don't need him overheating. We don't need to cause issues with the way his natural coat grows. So I'm actually going to show you. So his coat is super thick and plush. Like, that is a very thick coat. He's got his natural undercoat, he's got the overcoat as well, and he just gets, like, he'll even get more plush through the winter as we go. And if you've ever been around horses, if you put your hand under their mane, if you just put your hand into their fur, you can feel how warm they are. So there's really, if I were to throw a blanket on him, it would be causing a lot more harm than good. And just because of how thick, how plush and soft and like velvety and thick and everything it is, there's really no need to be throwing a blanket on there, right? Plus, knowing Rudnick, he'd probably just get himself tangled up and injured more than anything if he had a blanket on. So one thing I always like to tell people, if you ever drive past a field of horses and the horses are outside and it's snowing outside and you see them all standing out there with no blankets, you feel sad for them. They're covered in snow and you feel like, well, if I'm cold, they're cold. Now, key point here is covered in snow. If you drive past horses that are outside and it's snowing and you see, like, sometimes you'll see probably a good few inches of snow sitting on their back, and it's just sitting there, white fluffy snow, that's actually a good thing. So if the snow is sitting on their back like that and it's not melting, it means their body's able to keep the heat locked in that they need to stay warm. So it means that all their heat is staying in, they're keeping themselves warm. And if you were to drive past and see, you know, the snow was melting on their back, the horses are wet, they're shivering, it means that their body's actually not insulating that heat the way it should be. That heat is escaping, it's melting the snow on their back, it's causing the snow to melt and seep into their fur and get them wet. And that's when you have issues and problems that you probably want to address and start looking at blanketing them. But right now, Rudnick does not have an issue with that. I have never put a blanket on him unless it's like just like a cooling rug after a run in the cold weather. It just helps absorb all the moisture so they don't freeze. But as far as blanketing him in this colder weather right now, absolutely unnecessary. I do own horse blankets if I did have to blanket him, but so far in the, I think this is the 7th year I've had him now, there's just never been a reason to. We're gonna encourage his natural coat to grow plush and thick as it's needed. If the time ever comes where I feel he needs a blanket, absolutely I'll blanket him. But that time is not right now, so don't feel bad if you see horses that are not blanketed. It's actually not as common, like I said, unless they're old. They struggle with keeping weight on. They're showing, so they're clipped. They don't have that natural thick coat. There's a plethora of reasons why someone might decide to blanket their horse, and that's fine. Everybody can do things their own way. Everybody's got a right to their own opinion and how they do things, but this is simply why I don't blanket my horse and why he's simply never had a need to be blanketed, right?